Who knew that it would take the possibility of another form of human enslavement to bring the Pope to move another measure forward in acknowledging the harm of human slavery and the church's role in it? It's been an interesting week. Pope Leo's encyclical this week published his first Magnificat Humanitas, Magnificent Humanity, on safeguarding the human person in a time of artificial intelligence. I know I said AI. Just wait. Just wait. He says, humanity created by God in all its grandeur is today facing a pivotal choice, either to construct a new Tower of Babel or to build the city of God, and humanity would dwell together. So he's trying to talk about taking up the legacy of his predecessor, writing a social encyclical to address one of the great challenges of our time. In this case, he's going in big with artificial intelligence. So the Magnificat Humanitas is in 5 chapters, talking about technology not being a force antagonistic to humanity, nor is it inherently evil. He's also pointing out technology is never neutral because it takes on the characteristics of those who devise and finance and regulate and use it. And so he appeals for people to build for the common good and remain human, and to come to recognize the human heart, as he would say, where God desires to dwell. Now, this is powerful enough. This is a statement enough. I invite you to go kind of read the Vatican article about this. It's a good digest. But what's made the news about this encyclical, in talking about safeguarding the human person, the Pope asks for a pardon for how the Church, the Catholic Church, has delayed its response to the impact of slavery. At the core of Unitarian Universalism, we work with these themes as well: humanity, equality, freedom. We also, in Unitarian Universalism, have been complicit in racism and enslavement, even as so many of us work for liberty and human rights. This has been the case for centuries. The Pope's statement and this conversation about liberty and agency we've been having for quite some months now is another increment forward in this understanding, is another possibility of maybe nudging that arc of the universe in that justice conversation. And as we head into national and local Juneteenth celebrations, this is incredibly timely as a moment to be here. In Unitarian Universalism, in our congregation, I've been working through our current statement of core values from April into May. 2 years ago, UUs from across the country ratified the current statement of values. And for the last couple of months, we've been working with them, starting in the centering of love, looking at equity and justice, interdependence, generosity, and pluralism. Last week was transformation. And the core of that is that we evolve. And we are meant to do so. We are meant to become and to grow and to be changed by our lives and our encounters with church, by our encounters with people and with the world, and what we learn about the impact of our actions and those who came before us. We are always growing within this existence. And so this week, we're finishing up looking at these values by looking at justice. Justice in our new statement reads as this: we work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. And we covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregation, our association, and our society at large. It happened to work out this way, but I'm so glad I ended up having justice as the last one so that we could benefit from this conversation with the Vatican. I'm kind of intrigued by the working of this. In fact, I cited Pope Leo for another one of our conversations earlier this spring as an advocate for human rights. I haven't cited a pope this often, and I don't even know when. Like, never ever in the rest of my preaching career. I am intrigued. Let's see where this goes. Let me say a little bit more about the Pope's statement. Magnificat Humanitas is reinforcing the Church's message of love, and it's a call for the thoughtful use of AI with the awareness of its gifts and its hazards. The Pope is concerned about how AI and the structures using it are being built to capitalize on what's already threats to human dignity and freedom. Now, the Catholic Church already has a deep history with human enslavement, so this is a very relevant conversation. In the 15th century, or beginning in about 1452, there were a series of statements that gave permission for Westerners to dominate and claim lands and people in the name of God. Collectively, these works were known as the Doctrine of Discovery, and they were central to colonialism, including the enslavement of folks in Africa. And that doctrine of discovery is still embedded in our system so much, it is still present with us today. Now, the Catholic Church has made several statements in the last century or so to counter the impact of the doctrine of discovery and some of those works, but the effect continues in our law, in our culture, and in our behavior. So the Pope is concerned that history is repeating itself in how AI is beginning to impact us. And he draws on the devastation that has been shared and witnessed about what happens when we lose our sense of humanity and our precious nature and our spark of life. So here's a couple of the risks that he talks about. One, productivity over humanity. In the interest of productivity, there is the further risk of treating humans as machines. This is something we're already aware of, right? Already know this is in our culture. And the need for systems to focus on the person, not just the performance. We need to have systems that focus on the people, not just what they can make. The second concern is how AI is used to frame what to believe and to do, and also what to remove from our attention. There is the potential loss of spiritual, intellectual, emotional freedom when algorithms are shaped to shape us, to reinforce certain views, or to remove unwanted opinions. It reminds me of what the massive government did in the book 1984. They literally removed language and therefore ideas from human vocabulary. This is that work in progress. The third concern is the environmental and humanitarian impact. And this is in particular where Leo talks about slavery. Because, as they say in the Vatican article, AI also generates new forms of slavery, such as, they say, the scarred, injured, and worn down bodies of those who work for the extraction of rare earth elements, what's needed for the technology. Therefore, the Pope upholds the importance of combating new forms of enslavement as another decisive test for ethical discernment in this digital transformation. Pope Leo stresses that the Church renews her firm condemnation of every form of slavery, trafficking, and commodification of persons. And he underscores that to not react or to tolerate such things are grave violations to human dignity, means to be an accomplice. If you don't show up and shout it out, you are participating and complicit. I like this Pope. This is good. Productivity over humanity. What's already happening to limit and shape our thoughts, and what can destroy our bodies and earth even more. And and permission to do so, the deep permission to do so, because we have been operating from the assumption of use of humanity for centuries. And the Catholic Church has been a participant in this. And Pope Leo turns to the deep record of a church being an active participant in enslavement, and he includes a request for forgiveness in this encyclical. For the delay in the church acknowledging the impact of slavery, he says, "For this, in the name of the church, I sincerely ask for pardon. For this, in the name of the church, I sincerely ask for pardon. This constitutes a wound in Christian memory, one from which we cannot consider ourselves detached. And if we want to avoid the need to ask for pardon again in the future for having failed to respect the treasure of human dignity that is required by our faith, it falls to us today to denounce clearly, firmly, trafficking in its many forms, and together with all who are committed to this cause, support concrete efforts of prevention, protection, liberation, and rehabilitation." It's from the encyclical. If we want to not have to ask for pardon again, we have to show up in every way that we can. Reported in an article from the public broadcasting system, Black Catholic groups are finding this statement a much needed and a good movement forward. They want the church to go even farther in addressing its own direct connection with slavery, but this statement makes a difference. And I want to just pause here. As I was working through the description and the scope of time of this conversation from the Catholic Church beginning at least in 1452 into this artificial intelligence conversation. The length of history, hundreds of years, but also the depth of impact, of implications that doctrine of discovery had on permission to enslave. The more I consider this, the more I grasp the extent to which we struggle and to which we participate. That church authorizing the usage of people from those centuries ago has its impact on us now. And we have to live with that. And it's not going to be an easy fix. It's not just done in one sermon. And it's okay that it is uncomfortable. It should be. How powerful it is that this papal statement arrives just as this country is observing Juneteenth. As we heard in Jesse's story, Juneteenth is the fusing of June and 19th, that remarkable day on June 19th, 1865, that Union General Gordon Granger stood on the balcony of the building in Galveston, Texas, and read aloud General Order Number 3, which said in part, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. took 900 days from the first declaration of the statement until these people in Galveston, Texas heard it. News of revelation takes time, especially when folks want to keep it from being known. Juneteenth and the Emancipation Proclamation was an effort to declare liberty and humanity, specifically in this country for African Americans. As President Lincoln declared, in essence, all persons shall be free. And it took all that time for Union soldiers to make their way and enforce this all the way down to the southernmost point of Texas. In this moment, we get to consider the power of the stories, the implications of history, and where do we get to show up now? I think the Pope kind of lays it out. If we don't consider our humanity, if we don't make sure that we are taking care of one another and not using one another, then we are at risk for further enslavement of so many kinds. One of the great questions that keeps going is what is the role of white folks and those who benefit from white privilege in this conversation about race and this conversation about Juneteenth and many more? At the very least, we can pay attention and be uncomfortable and not be quite sure what to do. One of the most powerful pieces would be to let another story be at the center, to let other people's witness take precedence over ours. We can be very much like our Universalist historic folks, the Humiliati from earlier in the 20th century, who placed their sign for universalism being a cross off center from a circle, knowing that they are not putting themselves at the center of everything, theologically or morally or socially. We have an opportunity in this moment to live into what has been talked about so much in our commitment to justice, our aspirations to a more whole world, our conversations about beloved community, modeled for us so well in word and spirit and practice by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We have a chance for practice and real difference, beginning with ourselves, beginning with this congregation, beginning with our community in this moment. As my colleague, the Reverend Karen Johnston, talks about, this is a moment where there is both joy and celebration of this liberating message, even in the pain of, even in the midst of pain and injustice, because it is a good thing that this Juneteenth happened, that this celebration happened, that the people were remembered and cherished and held. We make our way into a common future, she says. We are immersed in our collective past, our institutions that have been so shaped by so much bias, by so much wanting to make humans into things. We have a chance to say what we would like to be in the future, call out our humanity, to be with one another and say, I see you, and we are here together. We have a chance. And I call us forward into listening for liberation, focusing on freedom, cherish celebration, perceive the possibility of what is before us, and to generate justice. Let us enter into, let us continue this deep work together. Amen.